Good afternoon, Mr. Nonso. Hello, Mr. Nonso, can you hear me? Hello, Mr. Nonso. Good afternoon, Mr. Nonso.
Hello, good afternoon, Miss ESP webinar.
My name is Jessica.
Okay, were you the one who called me yesterday?
Yes, I was the one.
All right.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? I hope so. Hello?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
Good
great. Just
afternoon.
my mic.
Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you.
Hi, Thomason. Hi, Thomason. Good afternoon. So is it when you?
Hi.
I saw the name. I said this name looks familiar. I didn't even know you were the one.
So the call is already on record, though.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll
Yeah.
talk later.
Yeah.
We'll talk later.
No problem. No problem. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. By 3 p.m. panelists. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can. We can hear you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're kicking off today's webinar. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of the ESP Practical Lawyer through webinar series. My name is Jessica Ekenebu. I'm the moderator for today's webinar. At ESP Training Limited, we provide comprehensive continuous professional learning with courses and training across various areas of practices. We have tagged this webinar series the launch our webinar series that is slated to hold at 3 p.m. every Tuesdays and Thursdays respectively. After every section, we'll provide the resources in easy accessible format on a go for everyone who's interested. Today's topic is Nigerian data protection law and targeting of social media users. And at the end of this webinar, the attendees will be able to understand the legal framework of data privacy and protection law in Nigeria, social media, the NDPR, obligation for social media companies under the NDPR, technical law frame for the use of social media network in Nigeria, NCC. Please, if you do have any question while the webinar is going on, please do type on the Q&A or raise up your hand, and in due time it will be answered. It is with great pleasure I introduce our speakers for today. We have Mr. Nonso, who is a data protection solicitor, speaking of relevant laws impacting data protection and data privacy in social media under Nigerian law, and he'll be our first speaker. We have Mr. Moses, who is a tech policy analyst, and he will be speaking on securities and safety of social media users and social media regulation in a democratic Nigeria, challenges and implications. We have Mrs. Uwasebe, who I hope I pronounced that well, who is a privacy program consultant at Gentle Funds Services, and she'll be speaking on the technical framework for the use of social media network in Nigeria. We have Mrs. Ola James, who is a legal and compliance lead in Wolfram Finance Limited, and she'll be speaking on the effect of NITD regulation and status in Nigeria data privacy and data protection regime. And we have Ms. Thomason, who is the General Counsel at LG Electronics, and she'll be speaking on challenges of regulating social media in democracy and implication of regulating social media in the democracy. So over to you, Mr. Nelson.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I believe you can both see and hear me.
Yes, I can.
Okay, I will kindly permit me to share my screen so we can get right into the business of today.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we will be talking about the relevant legislation impacting data protection and data privacy in the social media under Nigerian law. And I will be taking us through
Sorry,
this.
Mr. Nassir. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Yes, you can on your camera.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. So we will be addressing the relevant legislation impacting data protection and data privacy in the social media under Nigerian law. This is going to be necessary for us to understand what the other speakers are going to be speaking about in the course of this lecture. So the first thing that we are going to be looking at is that we are going to be looking at the definition of key terms. When we talk about data protection and data privacy in Nigeria, what are the key terms that we need to avert our mind to? And let's just quickly gloss through this definition of key terms. So first of all, we have term privacy. Privacy is defined as the right to be let alone, the right to the ability to shield oneself from unwanted access by others. It is also the right to the concealment of certain matters from others, and the right to the ability to exercise control over information about oneself, and the protection of one's personality, individuality, and dignity, and also the control over or limited access to one's intimate relationship or aspect of one's life. So these 6 different parameters are what we look at, the things that constitute what the concept of privacy is. So if you see any definition of privacy that is given by a legal scholar or by a legal text, it usually falls under any of these 6 parameters. So it's necessary for us to understand what privacy is so we can get an idea of what this topic is all about. So after we've defined privacy, the next thing we're going to be looking at now is personal data. And personal data can be defined as any information relating to an identified or identifiable living person. So the important thing is that when we talk about personal data, it has to relate to a living person, a human being, not an artificial person. This is the definition given by the law in Nigeria. So personal data includes the name, identification number, location data, email addresses, contact details, bank details, etc. And under the definition given by the law, it also includes posts on social networking sites. So when you make a post on your social media or social networking site, and it relates to any of these things we have defined, such as the name, location data, etc., it's also defined as the personal data. The next thing we are going to be looking at is data protection. So what is data protection? Data protection is the process of safeguarding personal data from corruption, from loss, or from compromise. In Nigeria, data protection is seen as an integral part of the fundamental right to privacy. This is something that has been defined and decided by the Court of Appeal in Nigeria in this case of Incorporated Trustees of Digital Rights Lawyers Initiative against NIMC in 2021, just last year. So it's very important for us to understand that when we talk about data protection in Nigeria, it is seen as an integral part of our fundamental right to privacy. And finally, we are going to define what the social media is. The social media is interactive technologies and digital channels that facilitate the creation and the sharing of information, ideas, interests, and other forms of expression through virtual communities and networks. So I believe in the 21st century, we should all know what the social media is. It's the platform that we use to share information and to network, to share information, to network with our friends and family. So we know all of this. So now that we have an idea of what these key themes relating to this topic is, we will now move on to the next part of the lecture, which is to observe what are the different legislations that relate to social media in Nigeria. So first and foremost, we have the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended. And this is the ground norm, as we all know. The ground norm, it provides for the basic law. And Section 37 of the Constitution provides that the privacy of citizens, their homes, correspondence, telephone conversations, and telegraphic communications is hereby guaranteed and protected. So this provision of the Constitution is contained in Chapter 4 of the Constitution, which makes this right to privacy as a fundamental right in Nigeria. Then you can see the portion of this Section 37 of the Constitution, which I underline, that is the correspondence, telephone conversations, and telegraphic communications. It has been given judicial interpretation by the Court of Appeal in the case of Emerging Markets Telecommunication Services Limited and NIA, where the Court of Appeal held that this phrase includes information which is sent and received over the internet. So when we talk about this, when we talk about the personal data that is being sent over the internet, as we defined in the last slide, it is part of the right to privacy as guaranteed by Section 37 of the Constitution in Nigeria. Then it's also important for us to note that the fundamental right to privacy as guaranteed by Section 37 of the Constitution is not an absolute right. However, it is subject to the derogation contained in Section 45 of the Constitution. And that derogation provides that nothing in Section 37 of the Constitution shall invalidate any law which is reasonably justifiable in a democratic society, either in the interest of defense, public safety, public order, public morality, or public health, or for the purpose of protecting the rights and freedoms of other persons. So for there to be a derogation from the fundamental right to privacy as contained in the Constitution, that derogation has to be via way of a law. It must be via way of a law for either of these specific purposes which have been listed in Section 45 of the Constitution, which is for the purpose of defense, public safety, public morality, public order, or public health. So moving on now to the other legislations in Nigeria that deal with personal data and social media in Nigeria, we have what is called the Cybercrime Prohibition, Prevention, etc. Act of 2015, which was the legislation that was passed by the National Assembly in 2015 to combat the rising rate of cybercrime and other related crimes in Nigeria. So the important sections of the cybercrime which relates to personal information and social media in Nigeria we have section 12 of the Act, which prohibits the unauthorized interception of privately transmitted information. So where somebody, by means of a computer network, intercepts any information that is sent privately from one DM to another DM, from one private channel to another private channel, anybody who intercepts such message has committed an offense under the Cybercrimes Act. We also have section 22 of the Cybercrimes Act, which prohibits identity theft and impersonation on social media. So when someone takes your identity, is using your name, using your pictures, we call it catfishing on Twitter. When somebody takes your picture, takes your name, and it's pretending to be you, the person is actually committing an offense under section 22 of the Cybercrimes Act. And for this particular offense, you can actually be prosecuted and sentenced to a jail term of, I think, 5 years, and also be punished with a fine of 7 million naira. So we need to be very, very careful with the way we use other person's pictures and identity on social media. Then section 23 of the Act also prevents the transmission of child pornography via social media. This is very important because we notice that people look at the definition of personal data. It also includes the photographic images, that is the photographic images of a data subject. So where these photographic images is that of a child, and you are engaging in the transmission of these images via social media, you are committing an offense under the Cybercrimes Act, because I'm sure we are all aware of the incident which happened a few weeks back when a particular school was accused of, or when some students of a particular school were accused of engaging in the immoral act of sexual intercourse when they went for a competition, and several persons were sharing the videos of the pornography on social media. Those persons who have engaged in that act are actually committing an offense under the Cybercrimes Act. The section 24 of the Act also prohibits cyber stalking and cyber harassment on social media. So when somebody is stalking you or sending you offensive messages on social media or harassing you on social media, and this also contains when people are stalking you, like they're following you on different platforms, still trying to see what you are up to, they're actually committing an offense, and they can be punished under section 24 of the Cybercrimes Act. Then we have section 32 of the Act, which prohibits the circulation of phishing links or spamming on social media. So phishing links are links where somebody sends out a harmful or malicious link that at the time when you click the link, it will either steal your personal information or it downloads a malicious software to your computer. And we know spamming, when you wake up and you start receiving all sorts of irrelevant business, somebody spams you with broadcast messages on WhatsApp, it's actually an offense under the Cybercrimes Act, which people are not aware of this. So we have to be very, very careful with the way we send or we forward links on social media and how we forward or send out broadcast messages on social media to ensure that we're not committing an offense. Then lastly, under this act, section 39 of the Cybercrimes Act empowers law enforcement agents during a criminal investigation to intercept messages sent through a computer network or system in the course of their investigation. So this power can only be enforced by the law enforcement agents who have obtained a valid order of court from the court. So remember that section 45 of the Constitution provides that we can derogate from our fundamental right to privacy by virtue of a law that is used in public order, public defense, or public safety. So this is one of the times when the law, that the Cybercrimes Act, provides for a derogation from our fundamental right to privacy that can be used by the law enforcement agencies. So if a law enforcement agency carries out this exercises its power by intercepting or by reading your private messages without having an order of court backing him, the person is actually infringing your rights and you have a remedy in that. But that is not actually the purpose of this session. So let's move on. The next legislation that concerns social media and data protection in Nigeria is what we know as the Nigerian Data Protection Regulations, NDPR 2019. So the NDPR was passed by NITDA in 2019, and it was introduced to be a form of regulation that was modeled after the European General Data Protection Regulations. And the NDPR, among other things, it seeks to safeguard the rights of natural persons to the privacy of, it seeks to safeguard the rights of natural persons to, I'm giving a minute, please, my computer seems to be shaking. It seeks to safeguard the rights of natural persons to the privacy of their personal data by, among other measures, regulating transactions involving the collection, the use, and the exchange of personal data. So this is the definition that was given by Professor Erekutan Okupon. So this is the purpose of the NDPR. And it's important to also note that the data privacy protections afforded by the NDPR are part of the fundamental right to privacy as guaranteed by Section 37 of the Constitution. So as we earlier identified, that the Court of Appeal has held that data protection rights are fundamental rights. So you can enforce any of the provisions of the NDPR through a fundamental rights enforcement provisions. Through the rules enforcement provision rules, because the court has held that the rights of the NDPR are part and parcel of the fundamental right to privacy contained in Section 37 of the Constitution. And then the NDPR regulates the activities of data controllers in their use of personal data of all natural persons who are Nigerian citizens or persons who live in Nigeria. So the NDPR applies to people living in Nigeria, that is anybody who lives in Nigeria, whether the person is a Nigerian citizen or not, or people or Nigerian citizens who are living abroad. That is the scope of the NDPR. Then a data controller is a person who either alone, jointly, or with other persons, or in common with other persons, or a statutory body determines the purpose or the manner in which personal data is processed or is to be processed. So using this definition, we can see that social media sites which operate out of Nigeria are data controllers. So any social media site that is domiciled or headquartered in Nigeria that is being operated from Nigeria, for example, we have Nairaland. This is a data controller under the purview of the NDPR, and they must comply with the provisions of the NDPR. Then also foreign social media sites, such as the important ones like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., who deal with or who handle the personal data of Nigerian citizens residing in Nigeria. This social media site, this foreign social media site must also conform with the provisions of the NDPR. So let's move on to see what the NDPR said about social media. So any social media organization that operates in Nigeria or that caters to Nigerian citizens must have a legal basis for the processing of every piece of personal data that they obtain from Nigerian citizens. So they must identify a legal basis. And when we talk about legal basis, there are different legal bases for the processing of personal information in Nigeria under the NDPR. But the most important one that relates to social media is consent. Because before you can sign up for any social media site, you as the user, you have to give your consent. And any person who owns and operates a social media account in Nigeria is called a data subject. And these data subjects have rights that are protected under the NDPR. And persons who sign up for social media sites should be informed of their data protection rights at the point where they sign up. So just before, as at the time when you are opening an account with any social media site, you are going to be informed of your data protection rights. That's why you notice that when you're opening an account with Facebook, with any social media site, before you can open or create the account, you have to check a box. You have to tick a box that shows that you have read the terms and conditions and you have read the privacy policy of that site before you can actually open that account. And then the data subject rights under the NDPR includes the right to be informed about what the personal data that the site is collecting from you will be used for. It also includes the right to consent to the processing of personal data. It also includes the right to object to the processing of personal data. So you can actually tell the site that you no longer want them to process your information. So you can object to the processing. And you also have a right to request the rectification of incorrect data. So in the event that you provide an incorrect information to the social media site, you can actually inform them that you want them to correct that information, and the site, the network, the social media site is bound to rectify the information. Once you've notified them, they have an obligation to do that. And you also have a right to access a copy of your personal data held by any data controller. So you can actually write to or inform any social media site, telling them that you want to know all the personal information that they hold about you, and they are bound to provide this information to you. Then other sources of data protection legislation that relates to social media in Nigeria include case laws. Case laws are decisions of the courts, decisions of judges that deals with the right to privacy and data protection in Nigeria. During the course of this lecture, I've referred to different decisions of the Court of Appeal that deal with data protection. So we notice that in recent times, since 2015, the Court of Appeal has been hearing cases that deal with data protection rights, and they've been delivering a lot of interesting judgments. And this judgment has formed part of the jurisprudence of Nigeria and is binding in Nigeria. And to the best of my knowledge, I'm not aware of any decision by the Supreme Court or I don't think the Supreme Court has actually heard any case yet that deals on data protection, but we are hopeful that in the years to come, some of these decisions that have been delivered by the Court of Appeal will go on further appeal to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will have the opportunity to expound the jurisprudence of data protection legislation in Nigeria. But barring any further decisions of the Supreme Court, all the existing judgments of the Court of Appeal that we have on data protection rights have formed part and parcel of our laws on data protection in Nigeria. Then we also have international conventions. We have different international conventions that deal with the right to privacy and also data protection that have been ratified in Nigeria. So these international conventions form part and parcel of data protection legislation in Nigeria. So for example, we have Article 12 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that is almost in parallel material with Section 37 of our Constitution that guarantees the right to privacy in Nigeria. Then we also have Article 17 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, that is the ICCPR, and Article 14, of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. So these international conventions have all been ratified in Nigeria, and they actually have the force of law in Nigeria. The international conventions that protect the right to privacy. And as we all know, data protection is a part of the right to privacy in Nigeria. Then another source of legislation that we have in Nigeria is the General Data Protection Regulation, that is the GDPR. So this is very interesting because when I talked about the NDPR, I said that the NDPR applies to Nigerian citizens that live abroad and also to to anybody living in Nigeria. So the same thing, the GDPR is an European legislation, but the GDPR applies to EU citizens who live in Nigeria. So when an European is living in Nigeria and has or is listed or operates a social media site that is being operated from Nigeria or owned by Nigeria, that social media site has to take cognizance of the fact that the European Union GDPR applies to that social media site as far as that European citizen is concerned. So it's not enough for you to just set up a social media site in Nigeria. You have to make sure that when you have foreigners signing up on your site, that their rights are also protected under their own foreign legislation, such as the GDPR in Nigeria. And then finally, we have what is called the data protection bills. Now, we have different bills. The National Assembly has been considering a Nigerian data protection bill, which they want to pass into an act. And also in Lagos State, the Lagos State House of Assembly has also been considering the data protection bill at the state level. So these different bills are still at the different houses of assembly, that's the National Assembly and the Lagos State House of Assembly. And if these bills are passed into law, they will become the primary legislation on data protection law in Nigeria. And there has been a debate as to the competence of the Lagos State House of Assembly to pass this data protection bill in Lagos State, because some people are feeling that it is left to the exclusive, it's within the exclusive rights of the National Assembly to legislate on. But we need to understand the fact that as at the time when the 1999 Constitution was enacted, there was nothing like social media. Social media was not, it was something strange. So the people who drafted the 1999 Constitution didn't contemplate data protection rights or data protection, or even they didn't see privacy the way we see it today. That is the reason why data protection or even privacy is not contained in either the exclusive legislative list or the concurrent legislative list, because it's something that came before, it came after the Constitution had been passed. So there has been a dispute, a jurisprudential debate on which legislative house has the power and the competence to enact the data protection bill, whether it is left to the federal legislative house or the Lagos State House of Assembly. But we can never tell until either of these bills have been passed into law and somebody actually challenges any of the bills to see which legislative body is actually competent to pass this law. So I think that brings us to the end of my part of this seminar. And I thank you all for listening. And if you have any questions or comments, you can type in your comments into the chat box and I attend to it. Or you could always send me or shoot me an email. My email address is displayed on the screen. Thank you very much, and it's been an honor.
Thank you so much, sir, for a very insightful presentation. Our next speaker is Mr. Moses, and he will be speaking on security and safety of social media users and social media regulation in a democratic Nigeria, challenges and implication. Over to you, Mr. Moses. And please, if you do have any question, please do type on the Q&A, and after everyone's presentation, the questions will be taken. Thank you so much. Over to you, Mr. Moses.
Okay, thank you very much, Jessica. Just want to confirm if you can hear me.
Yes, I can. I can hear you. And
Okay.
you can on your camera.
Okay,
Thank you.
yes. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, ESQ. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for the participant for staying up to now. Let me send you my apologies. Sorry, I won't be able to on my camera. Where I am, the location where I am now, the broadband is not that great. So, and again, it takes a lot of bandwidth. So I don't want this whole session to be interrupted. Just want it to go seamlessly. But I will put on the slides so that let me just put on my slides now. Okay. So is my screen on?
It says, yes, it is.
It is, okay. So thank you again, once again. So my area for this conversation, it's on the aspect of security and safety of social media users, and also the regulation of social media, its challenges and implication. So again, just to put out what the disclaimer, these two aspects which I'm going to talk about, it's something that to really be able to have a full conversation and understanding of this is going to take a lot of it's going to take more than the appointed time for me. But again, I will try as much as possible to make it as simple as easy for us to just understand what it all means. And again, just start the conversation on this on this area, because again, it's very important. So I will start by just saying that social media have become an integral part of our online lives, and we know that it's a great way for us to stay connected with others. But again, it comes with its own risks, and that's why the conversation on social media security and safety is very important to every one of us, so that we can keep, again, our personal information and accounts safe from the wrong hand. So, okay, so before I even go further, so the aspect I'll be treating today, dividing into two parts, which again, I will briefly talk about the security and safety of social media users, and again, the social media regulation in a democratic Nigeria aspect. So going forward, so basically, these are not the whole exhaustive list on how you can ensure a very good online hygiene or ensure security and safety of social media, of your social media accounts, whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, whether it's your Gmail, YouTube, whatever account. This is not, but I think the list is very long, but I think these are just the core areas, and understanding of this, you'll be able to deal with other aspects of security and safety measures of your of any social media platform you are using. So starting with privacy and security settings. So most of us know that we have privacy and security settings on our social media, but I don't think all of us actually have visited that setting or try to even restrict, or try to even just use it and know what it's all about. But again, this privacy and security setting exists for a reason, and it is important that we learn about and use the privacy and security settings on whatever social media platform we are using. And they are there for a reason, to help us control who sees what we post and manage our online experience in a positive way. Now, on the aspect of owning your own online experience present, it's when applicable, always is needed for us to always set the privacy settings on website, platform we visit, or platform we always constantly use, to our comfort level in the terms of the kind of information we are sharing outside. And again, I'm here to just tell you that it's okay to limit how and with whom you want to share whatever information you want to put out there. I know that yes, it's that we're in the time of age that we want to put ourselves out there, brand ourselves well, so that again, our clients or whoever want to position ourselves. But again, it's okay for you to limit whatever you want to put out there to a certain set of persons online. Stay clear of oversharing. So here, when you post personal information on social media, you make yourself, your loved ones, and even your physical belongings a target for cyber criminals. So it's good to avoid posting things such as name, phone numbers, address, your workplace, and other sensitive information as text or in photos, or just giving people idea wherever you are. Because again, if someone really means you, they can use all information you use to determine the exact place you will be at a particular time. Keep security software current. Again, I know that many of us, we don't update most of the apps that is on our phone and on our laptop. Some might complain that it takes enough data, but as much as possible, it is important to always put all applications on your phone or your laptop is always up to date. And when in doubt, throw it away. Okay, this aspect wasn't listed. It's just saying that links in email, tweet, post, online advertisement are often how cyber criminals try to steal our personal information. Even if you know the source is something that looks suspicious, always delete. So let me give you an example. I don't know if we have noticed the trend that most of your friends or some of your friends or some of the people that Instagram always give you suggestion to add them as friends on Instagram. You find out that when you click, you find that this person as if the person just created a new Instagram account. So what has been happening I've seen trends where someone just send you a link to your Instagram, send you a DM on your Instagram or even Twitter and tells you, my sister, child, whoever is contesting for, is it the most beautiful baby, 1 year baby, or just something, and say, please vote. Once you click that link, they just take over your social media account. So again, even emails, once you see emails that again you are not setting up, even if you are setting up, try to always double check that what source is this email or what document is this person. Again, all these measures might look as measures that are demanding again, but if we are really serious about our online hygiene and safety, it's important that we try to ensure that all these measures are done by us. So the aspect of passwords, it's always necessary for us to update our password, and which can help enhance our security. Again, I don't need to stress this one. Double authentication. Password shouldn't just be your name, shouldn't just be a normal a sentence or a word which it's easily determined by, because again, I was looking for a picture to put on this slide. There was a picture that gives you like, okay, if your password has just like a name, let's say for example, it's security and safety, and that's your password. It can take maybe 1 second for a particular brute force procedure to break your password and the rest. So it's advisable that your password should have capitals, small letters, numbers, and all those things. So make it hard. And again, your password for your Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, email, all should be different passwords. Like I said, these things might look again at a daunting task, but it's better we adhere to some of these aspect of security and safety measures online. So going to the gist of social media regulation in a democratic Nigeria. The internet, again, back to what I said earlier, the internet has connected billions of people around the world, wherein we now have the collective knowledge of centuries at our fingertips. And this has made our economy vastly more efficient and open to new opportunities. The internet also again has provided the possibility for people with shared interests to find each other, like me and you now, being able through the platform is ESQ, being able to connect and even hear each other, answer answer questions, use it to, and also the internet has given us opportunity to use it for our personal branding, position of ourselves. Many of us, if not all of us here on this webinar, have gotten opportunities and connected to people through social media. And with all of this, we can all agree that the internet and the information technology revolution has been transformative and there's no turning back. However, but like all advances in technology, it sometimes comes at a price. And in this case, we see that the information technology ecosystem, social media, or emerging technology is turbocharging some of humanity's worst impulses. And I would say that these effects that we are experiencing are unintentional or even, again, avoidable. It's simply the consequence of billions of humans suddenly plug into an instant 24/7 global information stream. So every now and then, you turn left, right, center, your phones, you are being fed with informations everywhere. So before now, let's say before the emergence of, again, the likes of, so this slide just showed the emergence of social media, but it didn't capture every social media. So let's say before the emergence of the major ones, let's say Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, even High Five, even MySpace, before even online streaming became a thing, we were all limited to a particular number of TV stations, newspaper, which on its own, again, at that time had its own issue, particularly, and this particular issue was the exclusion of voices and perspective. Then because of the limited access to, again, televisions and where you get information, there was, again, what I would say, little of confirmation bias, little of polarization of information. However, now, again, we occupy an entire different media reality, which has made all of us prone to what psychologists call confirmation bias. And I believe that it's fair to say that some of the current challenges we face are inherent to a fully connected world, wherein our brain are accustomed to taking in too much information this fast, and a lot of us are experiencing overload. But not all problems we are seeing now are an inevitable project or a byproduct of this new technology. They are also the result of very specific choices which are made, again, by these technology companies that have come to dominate the internet generally, and, again, social media platform. And again, just I forgot to say that the first speaker, you did a very fantastic job in coming up with all the regulations, the laws, again, that, again, has to do with data protection, privacy, and social media regulation. I think you've onboarding that aspect for me, and I think other speakers, in maybe reiterating this aspect of the law. Thank you for that. So going forward, when the internet was founded and before the emergence of social media, the pillars of the web or the internet per se was based on, as you can see on the slide, on comprehensiveness, relevance, and speed. With the rise of social media and the need to better understand people's online behavior, sell more advertising product, the drive for profit, the pillars of the internet or technology companies have now changed to more about personalization, engagement, and speed. And this, unfortunately, this has given opportunity for, again, what we can see, hate speeches, a polarization of views, inflammatory content to attract more engagement for social media users. So we've seen where sophisticated bad actors, foreign powers now boost the reach of deceptive or harmful message. So if, again, what we can see here, fake news, hate speech, where because if certain countries or individuals or political party wants to push certain agendas, it's just for them to use, again, Facebook, to use Twitter, get certain people to tweet and listen. So the more likes you get, the more engagement you get on that particular post, the more it's being shared around. And again, people tend to believe, oh, okay, if this person has more engagement on this post, then I think it's true. So the era of us being objective, that objective and cross-checking, is this information actually true? It's really, let me say, it's going away. So for many of us web users and again, users of social media, platforms aren't just our windows in the internet. They serve also as our primary source of news and information. Like I said, I don't think 90%, I would say 90% of or 80% of us here, if we want a particular information, I don't think any of us will go to Guardian online or Vanguard online or even buy a newspaper. Majority of us will just go to Twitter, check what is trending currently, and check, okay, read about it. And that's how many of us even get this news information. So no one tells us that the window of this information, that we access all this information or the content we get, is blurred. However, this window again is subject to unseen distortion and subtle manipulation that we don't know is happening. Again, like I also ask people, the thinking or the thoughts you have at a particular time or at a particular period, how sure is it's even your thoughts? Do you think it was even influenced by, again, something or the kind of information or the kind of group that you've tilted yourself to that aren't opposed to your views and opinions about certain subject? So over time, we've lost our capacity to distinguish between facts, opinion, and fiction. What is true, what is false, or maybe I think we've just stopped caring. And all of us are now learning that if not, I won't even say learning, that all of us know now that if we want to rise above the crowd in terms of, again, everybody wants to be an Instagram or social media influencer, you must get likes, and again, your content must go viral. So we tend to see people coming up with all sorts of content online just to get that viral, get that traction. An example, I think the typical example, was it last 2 weeks, where a lady in Lagos posted on Twitter that she was raped. And when the police even went to the location, they found out that it was a lie. She just posted it. And according to her, she said she didn't think it was that serious. So all through social media, you find different kind of conspiracy theories, posts, and the rest that, again, people put up there, again, just for either for it to be viral or just to be relevant. And again, so here, this slide just shows states and countries where, again, hate speech, the disinformation has really been used to target certain group of people, again, maybe cause riots or even ethnic religious fights. Again, like for example, in Myanmar, it has been well documented that hate speech shared on Facebook played a major role in the murderous campaign against the Rohingya people on social media platform. And also, similar example also happened in Ethiopia. And again, in Nigeria, during the last election, we saw different pictures or videos coming up, people saying this is happening in this location. While again, maybe these pictures, even before the election, even now, there are certain pictures that just pop up and say certain things are happening. But again, it's maybe these pictures or videos happened 10 years or 15 years ago, and people just bring it up and again try to spur hatred or violence against a certain group of people. In addition, also, so aside from even individuals trying to use social media for their own benefit, we've also seen authoritarian regimes. Again, this is not an exhaustive list of countries, regime and strong men around the world, going from all these countries listed, they have learned to conscript social media platform to turn their own population against groups that they don't like, whether it's ethnic minorities, religious tribe, or community, or against journalists or political opponents, activists, class conflict, greed. We can go on and on. And again, so these platforms are strategic weapon against democratic countries that they consider as threats. So solving the issues and challenges of social media, again, it can when trying to solve all issues and challenges of social media, we cannot cure all the ills of what or the negative effect of social media on democracies again, such as Nigeria. But at least it can help tamp down this division, making us to, let's say, rebuild the trust and solidarity which is needed to make our own democracy stronger. Also, we cannot just get rid of all information, offensive or inflammatory content, hate speech on the web. I believe that we will be wrong to try, since again, there's the aspect of the conversation where freedom of speech is at the heart of every democratic society. And again, in this 21st century, what is the best medium for you to again express your freedom of speech? Again, social media. But again, I believe that the free, robust, again, sometimes cordial exchange of ideas, again, not the kind that we have on Twitter, produce better outcomes and again, a healthy society. And no democratic government should do what some authorities, again, what some government or individuals are doing by simply, again, a typical example, China, are simply telling people that they can or cannot publish. And again, I don't think, again, that a single individual or an organization should be charged with bringing a solution to the ills or negative effect of social media. Again, as recently we know that Elon Musk bought Twitter, and one of the things is tweeted that he wants to bring Twitter, he wants to again cure all the ills that Twitter. Again, for me, Twitter is bigger than an individual per se. But again, that's another discussion for another time. So in coming up with ideas on how, before I even go to that next, in coming up with ideas on how social media should be governed, I think this will involve our value judgment, because that is it. None of us are pretty objective. Again, what we consider as an unshakable truth today may prove to be totally random. But again, that doesn't mean that some things are truer than others, or that we cannot just draw a line between opinions, facts, honest mistake, and I think also intentional deception. I think what makes this distinction, as I've mentioned all the time, it's in our daily lives, work or at home or our little community. It's as long as we agree on a set of principles, some core values to guide the work that we do. So in the interest of full transparency, and I think what I've listed again on the slide should be like a guiding principle in coming up with whatever form, regulation, or policy that we want to use in regulating, again, the use of social media per se in any democratic setting. So any proposal that is going to hinge on governance of social media and the internet, it should border on whether such proposal or discussion will strengthen or weaken prospects to a healthy and inclusive democracy that encourages a robust debate and respect for our differences, whether it reinforces the rule of law and self-governance, whether it helps us make collective decisions based on best available information, and whether it recognizes the right and freedom and dignity of all citizens. Also, I believe that we must address not just the supply of toxic information, but also the demand on the supply side. So going forward, I think tech platforms, need to accept that they play, again, a very unique role in how we as people around the world are consuming information, and that their decisions have an impact on every aspect of the society. With the power that they have comes accountability. And in democracies like ours, at least there needs to be some democratic oversight. So for years, again, we've seen social medias companies have resisted the kind of accountability we are asking for. So social media platform call themselves neutral platform with no editorial role whatsoever in what their users see and engage. They insist that the content people see and post on their platform has no impact on their beliefs and behavior. That is what they claim, even though that even though they say that their business models and even though that their business model is majorly for profit and based on selling advertisements. I think, but there's also the part that the issue of content moderation of social media. Yes, there's been the call for increased content moderation, again, which again, some social media platforms have acknowledged. But again, content moderation alone won't limit the disposition of dangerous content or harmful inflammatory statement on social media. It won't go far. Users who want to spread disinformation, again, have become very good experts in pushing all kinds of content they want. But I think more importantly, it's technology companies and government again are still they need to come up with standard on how to operate and how their engagement and system influence and what goes viral and what doesn't. I think again, just like industry, again, what I would say industry standard. Okay, because I'm getting signed that I need to round up. Okay, just to I think okay, that's the last aspect of so social media. I think for me, is social media platform need to be subjected to some form of public oversight and regulation. We must come to terms that social media platforms have changed dramatically if we want to account for these changes. Social media again companies they require to have a higher standard of care when it comes to what is being posted on their platform. Regulation and innovation are not mutually exclusive. Again, in Nigeria, we have history of like regulatory new technologies in the name of public safety. But however, while companies always complain that the rules are going to stifle innovation and destroy the industry, truth is that a good regulatory environment usually ends up spurring innovation because it raises the bar and safety and quality. And it turns out that innovation can even meet that higher bar. And if consumer trust that new technology, social media is doing the right thing and is safe, then there's more likelihood to use it. And if properly structured, regulation again can promote competition. In conclusion, I think we should not expect that social media platforms, technology companies to solve all these problems on their own. However, we expect social media platforms to recognize the importance of democratic institutions. Aside that, also the government also should recognize the aspect of innovation and not stifling innovation, and find a way in coming up with right combinations of regulation and industry standard that will make a democracy such as Nigeria a stronger one. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Our next speaker is Ms. Tomi Singh, and she'll likely be she'll be saying something more on the regulation of social media in democracy and the implication of regulating social media in democracy. Over to you, Ms. Tomi Singh.
Thank you very much. All right, let me share my screen. Hello, everyone. Good to have you here. And thanks to those who have spoken before me. Just give me a moment to share my screen, please. Okay. All right. So as she has rightly said, I'll be speaking about the challenges of regulating social media in a democracy and its implication. So as not to have an overlap, from what other speakers have said, I'll just give a bit, I'll run through my slides briefly. And the first question for us is, do we really need to regulate social media? Do we have to? And if you see from trends and what you've observed, even you as a user of social media, you would observe that sometimes some things you say on social media has relevance in the real world. So while we're operating on social media, some of the things we say and do have implications on the real world. And also we've observed that, there's been misinformation, as Moses said earlier, misinformation, you find trolls, the scams you see online, deep fakes, online extremism, all of this have resulted from social media. Now, in comparison with traditional media, where you have like an editorial board who vets the content that is put forward before it's published, for social media, you don't have such board. So it really is freedom of expression. It really is what everybody says. And now this drives us to another question about whether social media platforms are value laden already. So if you ask the creators of all these platforms, they will tell you that their platforms were not created to spread fake news or to manipulate any person or, to promote trolls. Yes, but then the individuals who get to use them are the ones who use them for that. So you will say social media is good, but can also be used for bad, but the creators will tell you that they never intended for it to be bad. So how do we balance the intentions of the creators with those we have in the society who are not necessarily good? There's a very thin line in balancing that divide. Then you look at free speech. The Constitution provides that you should have freedom of expression. Everyone knows that now. But if you're saying you regulate social media, are we then saying that people should not be able to speak freely? Social media is the closest thing people have to political, conversations. That's where people can talk about the government. People can say, oh, I don't like this rulership, or this is what we should do. You recall when COVID hit, it was also a platform where, the health organizations were sending out updates and information. So social media definitely is good, but sometimes some of the things done there leads to violence against certain persons or a group of people, or promotion of a particular line of thought that people might not necessarily have had by themselves. So because of such things, you might want, I'm not necessarily saying you should regulate, but we're getting there. You might want to say because of this likely harms to the society, we should regulate social media. But then let's go back to the creation of social media platforms. Now, that they are privately created, they're not government run, right, mostly. So would it be different if these platforms were privacy centric from their creation? Would it be different if, for instance, Facebook already had me in mind and was very concerned about my privacy and, protected me all around before getting to that point? And would that mean that they would have had algorithms, popping up or flagging some words or some terms being used? Not necessarily. Now, it still falls on the person who created the platform to decide how he or she chooses to run the platform. But yes, if platforms are generally privacy centric, you would say, oh, there might be no need for regulation. But that's talking about the individual aspect of privacy, right? Now, because of the way social media has been a good tool, you would see that there's an economic cost to social media, or there's the economic cost to privacy, meaning, as Moses said earlier, when you exchange your information with this platforms to use their platforms, they use those information like mine, yours, gathered together. Those information can be sold to companies, to make targeted ads. So you might see on the surface, Facebook is just a communicating platform, right? But at the back end, if you look at Facebook's income last year, where do you think they got their revenue from? It's from selling ads, selling data to some companies who use it for targeted ads. So now, because of this economic cost of privacy, in that when I exchange my information with Facebook, whether or not they had the parameters for protecting my privacy, they gathered my information or my likely trends or my footprint, my digital footprint, by whether they use cookies or not, and yours as well. They gathered those information and said, oh, so and so persons in Nigeria are likely to view these information. And so they started targeting, me with those ads. Now, like I said, that's the personal side of things. Now, if you look at the communal or the social cost of privacy, just from the personal example I gave of me being targeted with certain ads, it will mean that I might not have had some thought processes before, but then because Facebook believes that I'm a certain type of person, then they consistently feed me with certain news. Or, since I don't have control over my feed, once I just get on my feed, I see something that I would not necessarily have opted to see. So, and then that social media uses functions on repetition, redundancy, things that would make people scroll. And let me just go to the next slide before this. So things that will make people scroll is what makes them, generate more income. The longer you stay on the platform, the more they're able to sell you things, that would make them make income from the other business they give the information to. Now, I'm not necessarily saying they leak the information, but as you've seen on news or news feeds, some of these platforms leak your personal information to other businesses to make an income. Now, with these things happening, how do we transform from just communicating, or I wanted to reach out to Moses on Instagram, or I wanted to reach out to Nonso on Instagram, and then all of a sudden, Instagram has become a place where they share, like Nonso's example earlier, where they share, a child porn, for instance. How did it become that? Initially, it was just a means of communication, a very simple tool, but now it has become a very significant tool for evil as well. So as you see here, you don't necessarily have control over your content, and then it's been monetized, and then there's use of algorithms to make sure that you get specific things. Now, because of these things, you would also wonder, okay, what type of social media site should I regulate, if at all you should be regulating any? Pinterest, should we regulate Pinterest? Pinterest is just, we're there to share ideas, mood boards and all of that. So if I have like a tailoring platform where I brought everybody on board, should I regulate such a thing? Now, it's very difficult to decide what to regulate, but you cannot say that, oh, we'll regulate just the Facebooks and Twitter, and we won't regulate the tailoring platforms, for instance, because if you do that kind of thing, you're saying that soft propaganda can thrive, right? Things that are not, or things that are hidden in plain, not necessarily know that someone will be talking about, some sensitive political information on a tailoring site, for instance. You won't know that will happen if you decide to select, oh, Twitter is the one that has more likelihood of being used for bad, and then the knitting sites don't have. So if you're saying you're going to regulate, how would you regulate the sites? How would you distinguish, between what is to be regulated and what is not to be regulated? And now the regulation we speak of obviously sounds like it's government regulation, because if you say they should personally regulate, some of them already do, and from different things we've been seeing is not so effective, right? So let's go to regulation, right? And how that regulation can sort of tilt to, a perception of being a restriction of freedom of expression. Now, there's this covenant that Nigeria is a party to, as you can see, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Now, the covenant says that, if you want to restrict freedom of expression and opinion, it should be on this basis. It has to be, the restriction has to be legal, has to be legitimate, has to be necessary, and has to be proportionate. Now, it's obviously difficult to even meet all of these criteria at the same time. If you recall, when Twitter was banned for a while, there was a lot of buzz about why. In fact, the communication wasn't even clear as to why it was banned, right? And they didn't meet all of these requirements. So how would you regulate social media? That's one of the challenges. As simple as it sounds, that's the first challenge you face in wanting to regulate social media. How exactly would you regulate social media? Are you saying the government will set certain standards for how to regulate it? Can the government decide what terms should be restricted from social media? Some things that appear on social media are inappropriate but are not illegal. Will those be regulated? Are we regulating just illegal things? Who determines what is illegal? Now, the context of illegal in some cultures, we have different ethnic groups in Nigeria. The context of illegal or wrong or inappropriate is different. And then the user culture of the internet is also different. So you would need extensive study, interactions with different stakeholders to even come to the definition of what to restrict or regulate. If the government is to do the regulation, you would need that extensive conversation. Now, like I said initially, it's very obviously difficult to regulate. Then you're talking about user protection and censorship. Sometimes the government might even claim that they're regulating social media, but then they're not necessarily doing that. In Russia, I know that there was some, I don't recall the specific law that was passed, but then there was something passed that made it wrong for citizens to speak against the government. Now, is that the kind of regulation that, if the government comes up and says that's the kind of regulation, you permit the regulation, is that the kind of regulation that will be permitted? So you're going to be curious to know, what type of regulation or protection are you affording the users of such platforms? And can you genuinely prove that you're protecting them and not censoring, their statements, or bypassing dissenting opinions from maybe what the government is communicating at that time? And like I said, social media is the closest to citizens speaking about the government. The manner in which they do it might not necessarily be right, but that's the closest they have. So are you going to shut them up or silence them? Absolutely. Now, there's also the difficulty or the challenge of the jurisdictional enforcement. Now, if we do this in Nigeria, right, if we decide to regulate in Nigeria only, and then I travel somewhere else, it's not like NDPR that says, okay, if you say something about Nigerians, or if you post something, you're using data of Nigerians, then you should do such and such things. This is just regulating the industry or the platform. If I'm outside Nigeria and I'm posting something or saying something, am I eliminated from, the regulation that has been passed because I'm outside Nigeria? Now, are other countries going to align with this regulation, or would we be shutting out all the social media platforms from operating in Nigeria? So there's a difficulty in deciding how you regulate, to what extent do you regulate, who are the parties to even decide the regulation of social media platforms, and how do you enforce the regulation of whatever it is you come up with eventually? That's the challenge on one hand. Now, if you decide and maybe eventually even succeed to regulate, what are the implications? As Moses and also has said, there's obviously a perception of, you've already breached our freedom of expression. Why can't I say this? I have the right to say this. Like I said, the platforms will tell you is individuals who are using the platforms for bad. But if I think a certain way, am I allowed to speak that way? And there's also the point of, where my right stops, another person's rights begin. So, okay, yes, you restrict me from speaking a certain way because it causes harm to certain persons, but I still feel like I'm restricted. That's one of the implications. And like I said, it's just a perception. It might not necessarily be established that you have breached my freedom of expression. Like you saw, one of the covenants that says you can actually restrict my freedom of expression. So if that is satisfied on all those four grounds, then fine. I can be restricted from expressing in certain ways that will cause harm to people because you have to protect other members of the society. I'm not the only one there. Now, from one of the challenges we mentioned about, let me just go back, the thin line between protection and censorship, you would have the implication of, okay, is government policing social media too much? Should they even be policing social media? Social media is privately owned. Should they be policing social media? And then would they likely abuse the policing of social media? So if we're running for a campaign now and I'm the person in power, and I've already said, oh, we're regulating social media and I don't want certain things to come out about me. Meanwhile, those things are factual. Is that not an abuse of the regulation? How do we ensure that, we don't have political influence on whatever? Political influence now is different from like just the political influence, like whoever is sitting in power. We don't have political influence on the regulation that may have been passed from being enforced appropriately. Now, there's also the clouded intention. Are we, in a democracy, are we tilting to autocracy? Are we trying to say that it is only the government that has the right to speak in certain ways or to say certain things, or individuals or citizens cannot speak in certain ways? So, there's just a very slight tilt or thin line between, oh, my right, autocracy, democracy. How do we balance all of this? But if a balance can be struck, between all of these points I've mentioned, then, the regulation might be successful eventually. That there are so many bills that have moved through the House, different stages, and have never really been passed. There's a reason those bills haven't been passed, because when they were subjected to, the floor or the House floor and then different opinions, feedback, even the society on social media itself, people, gave their opinions. There was a lot of backlash for those bills, and which is why they haven't been passed into law now. So, I mean, if they can get past all the opinions and satisfy that everything will be fine and everyone will be properly protected in truth, then maybe the regulation will be successful. Now, if I'm saying, okay, the regulation might not be successful, what might be the other alternatives? So self-regulation might be the better alternative, in that platforms are privately owned. I can decide if I put forth a service to the public, I can decide how that service should be used because I am the creator of the service. It's not a government given service. So if it's the case that I regulate and maybe by use of AI or whatever algorithms, I filter some things that I find inappropriate on my platform, I am the determiner of that. You cannot come at me and say, I have limited your freedom of expression, because in the first place, my creation of the platform is my freedom of expression to provide that service to you. So that might be a safer or faster way to regulate or prevent, all these trolls, extremism, all the things we see, manipulation, right? That's number one. Now, secondly, should we be focusing on the content itself first, or set up structures that would make sure that, social media functions in an acceptable manner? Let me cite an example. You recall when Facebook bought off some other at that time competing platforms. It was seen that Facebook was going against anti-competition laws, meaning Facebook wasn't giving people the right to choose where they wanted to express themselves, and then they were merging data from WhatsApp to Facebook to Instagram, merging everything together. Now, if you have such a monopoly, you would want to regulate them because they have formed themselves into a powerful force, and there seems to be no other alternative to their services. Now, for you to break that without necessarily regulating, you would focus on a structural approach to regulation, which is anti-competition laws, and enforce those laws to ensure that that monopoly breaks up into smaller independent companies that makes individuals or consumers use the different platforms that they choose to use. That might be a first approach to ensuring that you don't have the monopolies who would come and use my data however they choose or sell to whoever they please. That's number one. Secondly, you would say, okay, if at all if you've broken up the monopoly and then I'm posting something on the site, you should make the site responsible for what is being posted, because they are the creators of the site. They have the technology they put in place to, decide what goes out, what goes in. Since we're not like the traditional media that, has a censorship or like an editorial board, this platform liability would sort of stand as the editorial board saying, okay, before this goes out, this is not right. And I feel for this platform liability to even be effective in Nigeria, you might need to engage librarians, for instance, because our contextual use of language here is different from what you would find in other countries. If I say a particular word here in a particular context, it might mean something else in another client. So you might want to now restrict based on different countries, which is a longer story, to achieve. But yes, if you make the platforms liable for whatever results from the use of their platform. So if maybe someone posted something and it resulted in violence, and you can trace and prove that as a result of this post, so and so persons were killed in, there's an example like that, so and so persons were killed in social territory, then Facebook is liable because it was their platform that was used to propagate this crime. Now it delves away from civil to criminal, right? Which is well, maybe not easier, but it's just better to handle in that regard when you make them responsible for the structures they put. If you recall when I said initially that if these platforms were privacy-centric, would we want to regulate? So we're trying to say by this platform liability that you guys have to step up and have better structures to protect individuals who use your platform. First of all, do you even have age restrictions on your platforms? Can anybody just come online and like a content regardless of their age? We know that, yes, people would have false identification online, but that's another topic entirely when you're talking about platform liability. It will make them, or it will push those platforms to ensure, maybe multiple verification of person or people's identity before they come on the platform. So you won't have, younger people coming online and getting fed with things that are not age appropriate. The movie industry has done this in how they, differentiate different movies and their ratings, 18, PG. They were successful in that. So I'm sure there's a way we can implement that rating standard to the use of social media as well, to, adapting it for social media to ensure that people who are likely to, like children, for instance, do not get access to certain content, right? So now the low-hanging fruit of regulating ads. We already know that since the ads are like since the platforms are profit-generating platforms, that's their first drive. They created that platform. Yes, you think it's for communication, perfect. But then they're trying to make profit. So why would you want to prevent them from making profit? But you can say, okay, you know what? Make sure that how you make your profit is transparent. So if I put out this ad, who sponsored this ad? If I put up this content, who sponsored this content? You will see on traditional media, when some persons, I can't remember the show now, but there was a show growing up where when an advert comes on the person's show, the person after the advert plays says, I, for instance, Tominsi Olumuyiwa, endorsed that message. So if I endorse the message, then I will be liable, and it was put on my platform, I will be liable for the implications of my endorsement because I should have checked thoroughly before I endorsed that message. So if you first address this issue of ad regulation in terms of, the things they put, which NDPR is gradually trying to get at, right? In terms of maybe cookies, things they put on your devices to track your usage or your footprint. Before we go into content regulation, the income generating part of this platform should first be made transparent because it is functioning in a society. So if they make it transparent for us to see, how did you get this fund, who sponsored this ad, then that might be a first step to getting to a sort of regulation. And then, so if you layer all of this together, that ad regulation with other structural regulations, and then the self-regulations by the platform, then you might say you're heading somewhere, in terms of regulation. So I think this is an extensive topic. And like I said, is something that you need to engage stakeholders, continuous conversation. As the internet culture develops, you still need to keep observing the trends and knowing how to adapt whatever suggestions or regulations or legal parameters you want to put for the safety of persons to ensure that everyone uses social media safely. So with that, I've come to the end of my presentation. And if you have questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Lucy. Our next speaker is Ms. Uba pronounced it well, who is a privacy program consultant at Gen2 Fund Services, and she'll be speaking on technical framework for the use of social media network in Nigeria. You're mute.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just to confirm that you can hear me now.
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead to share my screen and we can carry on the conversation from there. Okay, great. So hello, everyone. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak at this webinar. Thank you to the previous speakers as well. They've all done a wonderful job in discussing the issues that pertain to the use of social media and regulating social media, as well as what we're seeing basically in the regulatory landscape so far. So thanks to everyone that has contributed. So my topic is going to focus really on the technical framework for the use of social media in Nigeria. And the focus would be on the framework that has been published by the NCC, that is the Nigerian Communications Commission. And we'll dive in to take a look basically at some of what has been, some of what has been suggested both for individuals and for organizations or businesses while they engage in the use of social media. I'll just note that, all the three speakers who have spoken before me have basically touched on a number of things that that formed a part of my presentation, and that just means we're going to have a quick one, basically. So I'll jump right in, and then we can just discuss these topics along the way. So the outline for our discussion really would just be to understand who the NCC is, how far social media has grown in the past few decades, what is contained in the framework that the NCC has published, and how that, what that looks like in terms of operations and applicability, both for private individuals or organizations or even government agencies. We'll also take a look at what type of vulnerabilities exist when engaging in social media, and what countermeasures can be used, to tackle these issues, as well as safety measures that a private individual should imbibe when engaging in social media platforms. So first off, we do know that social media is a big deal. Everyone has mentioned that. We don't have to, beat a dead horse. But I'd like to talk about who the NCC is. And just for those who might not know, the NCC is Nigerian Communications Commission, and they are the independent regulator that is responsible for regulating telecommunications in Nigeria. And they're established under the Nigerian Communications Act of 2003. The core of their focus really is to create an enabling environment to ensure the smooth running of information and communication technology services across Nigeria. Social media, having evolved over the past few decades, has gone from the traditional platform that was used to just, maintain mutual friendships or just sending out information, regular information, to become much more of an effective tool that is being used in various forms and across different levels of society, whether it be a professional who's trying to build their network, or an entrepreneur who's trying to grow their business, or government agencies, trying to push out policy, garner support from their citizens for changes that they hope to accomplish in their leadership. So with all that being said, we also have to understand that as other speakers have mentioned, social media does come with its own inherent security risks and issues that, are not something that you can expect to disappear, even if you do start regulating, because as human beings, we always are very crafty. We always find a way to, bad actors will always be bad actors. And even when you do regulate, there is a chance that it might be reduced, but it's not going to be totally eliminated. So with all that being said, you can see just this slide just shows basically a brief overview of kind of how social media has grown, and the growth trend of social media over the past few decades. And of course, this picture doesn't really capture all of them. There's a myriad of platforms out there. Some have come and some have gone. Some have managed to ride the wave and continue to grow. So we know for sure that, because of the pace at which technology is advancing, we can be sure that there are many more social media platforms that will come up in the future. The last speaker, Tomisin, mentioned, she was giving an example and she talked about a tailoring platform. I can assure you that already exists. So there are always going to be, people are always going to keep, coming up with ideas, innovative ideas to, kind of foster that connection across humans, all over the world. I'm sure some of us might be aware that, the metaverse is being built by Meta, formerly called Facebook. So there's only, you can only imagine, how much more advancement in technology we will be seeing when it comes to social media in the next few decades. So with all these issues in mind, in 2019, the NCC went ahead to publish a framework as a set of guidelines, really, for social media governance to help, all user categories engage beneficially on media platforms. And the NCC hopes to encourage the adoption of these guidelines across the country. Like I said, all user categories, individuals, business organizations, government agencies, and the likes. So the framework basically focuses on 3 things, but I broke it down into 4 because I think it paints a better picture and just helps you understand the concept holistically. And the framework focuses on goals, which basically means that you have to identify your objectives or the reason for why you intend to engage in social media. You also have to have in mind what strategy you intend to adopt. Additionally, you need to consider what governance, what measures, or what mechanisms you can put in place to govern your social media engagement. And then lastly, you also have to set controls in place that would help with monitoring and reporting your performance and assessing whether or not the social media campaign is accomplishing the purpose for which it was set up. So the first thing we're going to be discussing would be goals. So as an organization or a government agency or an individual, an entrepreneur, business owner, or just an average individual who wants to be on social media, who wants to be active on social media, or the common goal these days, people wanting to be influencers or just be popular on social media. One of the key things that you should be considering is, what are my goals? What is it that I actually want to accomplish by being active on social media, by opening up 2, 3, 5, 10, whatever number of platforms you do decide to create an account on? What is it that you hope to accomplish by doing that? And it's important to be able to clearly identify the purpose of that engagement, because then you're able to channel your activities and what you do towards accomplishing those goals, right? You want to be able to critically examine the various platforms that are available. Like I said, there are a myriad of them, several of them, just to mention but a few. We know the most popular ones: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, WhatsApp. There are many of them, right? Whether or not you decide to go on any of these platforms, you have to be sure that you've done your due diligence, meaning that you've taken the time to analyze what it takes to be on each of these platforms, understand how you can use these platforms meaningfully to engage the public in a way that, it brings the impact and the benefits that you're looking for, right? That you identified as your goals and objectives for going into a social media campaign in the first place. Right? Some of the objectives that an organization might have could be, wanting to push out better branding, wanting to promote or a product, or just overall improve public relations. It could also be that they want, for example, maybe a government agency wants to, utilize social media to effectively disseminate information to their citizens, to garner support for policies and laws that are being developed. An organization might also want to engage in social media to be able to, create awareness on generic issues that have to do with their with general well-being of the community that that they function in. So there are a number of reasons why an organization or a business might want to take a decision to be active, to actually pursue and to maintain a social media campaign, right? Now, after you've identified your goals, you've determined what it is that you actually hope to accomplish by being on any of these platforms. It's important, very, very important, to then determine your strategy. And strategy is basically, focused on 3 things: the people involved, the content that you intend to put out, and what platform you're going to be utilizing for your social media campaign. Now, mapping out the means by which your objectives will be met is the focus of building a strategy. From the onset, is very critical to build an effective strategy that outlines the most effective and efficient approach that will help your organization or your business achieve the purpose for why you decided to go on your, open up a social media campaign or a social media page or account in the first place, right? You want to carry out audits and a comparative analysis as much as possible to understand best practices and the standards that are applicable on each of those platforms, and what that would look like for you operationally. You also want to understand the risks that are associated on the different platforms, and what is it that is operational in the industry that that is being utilized to curb those risks. Excuse me. Apologies. You also want to outline, what techniques you could use to handle your competition, because you can be sure that you're not the only one who is going to be out there trying to push your narrative, trying to build your brand, and whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish by starting out on a social media campaign. So you want to definitely outline that, understand what techniques you're going to use to handle positive and negative feedback when you do receive that. as well as what you can do to improve, your performance, your social media performance overall. Because if you're going to be successful at running a social media campaign for your business or for an organization, or even as an individual building a personal brand, you need to know, you need to figure out how you're going to be able to handle criticisms, negative feedback that'll definitely come, because everyone just needs to get on their phone and type. That's all they need to do. So you have to kind of be ahead of that and set out techniques that will be used for that. You also need to focus on finding ways to build the right relationships, across diverse audiences. So for example, if you do decide that you want to have a LinkedIn platform, you want to have a LinkedIn account, you also want to be on Instagram, and for some reason you think it's also going to be beneficial for your organization to be on TikTok, you have to understand that all of these platforms are very different. They appeal to very different demographics, very different target audiences. You also have to understand that means that you have to create unique content that is focused on delivering value to that target audience, right? Finding out what it is that appeals to your target audience, and then channeling that into your content, the kind of content that you make, setting up some kind of schedule or content calendar that helps you that will help you, keep track of what it is that you're putting out as your content on these platforms. And then finally, you want to run a test, or at least evaluate your plans for these platforms. Like, go through, find out about algorithms, use Google Analytics, whatever it is that you need to do to understand how it works, and how it would in turn, how your actions by engaging in social media would translate into beneficial outcomes for your business, your company, your organization, right? So that's really what you want to be focusing on. Who are the people that you can entrust the responsibility to, if it's an organization, and if it's an individual, what you also want to focus on other important things like the content and the choice of platform to utilize. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this is a slide that just basically shows just a few of the popular social media platforms, and this gives you an idea of the demographic of individuals that are mostly on each of these platforms, the kind of content that is being consumed on those platforms, what is the strategy that typically works when you're engaging in these platforms, and just the overall things that you need to be aware of, risks, like I mentioned, what vulnerabilities exist on using those platforms, and how can you prepare yourself to handle those, right? So that's what you get that's the sense you get when you look at this slide. And that will ultimately help you determine what platform is best for the organization, or what type of content you really want to focus on putting out there. Because we've been talking about privacy as much as possible. We've talked about how it's important to, watch what you put out on the internet, because you don't want to give bad actors, you really don't want to give them all the tools that they need to destroy you before you're even successful. So, you want to be cautious of things like that. So, doing your research as much as possible, doing your analysis to understand what it means when you're on there, and what you can do to protect yourself is very, very important. I mean, the end goal for every organization, for every individual, will be different, because different brands have different goals. An organization really should be able to identify and select what platform adequately meets the objectives that they've set for themselves, and that meets the target audience, the demography that they're trying to, effectively engage, right? And then in some cases, some people, like I said, may find it beneficial to engage people across different platforms. If you're taking the decision to do that, then you need to understand that you have to properly structure out your policy or your team in such a way that everyone understands what their responsibilities are, and what type of content should be going into the individual platforms, because they're definitely not going to be the same. And after you've determined what strategy you're going to adopt, you also need to understand governance, right? This element is very crucial, and it usually requires the individual or the organization to establish, policy standards that would help to tackle the associated risk of social media usage. You want to set up internal controls, guidelines, and procedures that are focused on best practices to help, ensure the success of your social media campaign. If you set up a governance framework, it should be able to identify employees, to the specific individuals that are responsible for each task, what their roles and responsibilities are. You also need to establish training programs for your, say for example, for the individuals that are responsible for maintaining your social media campaign online. You want to ensure that those individuals are keeping at least their knowledge base is currently being regularly reviewed, because the space is changing all the time. Like the landscape for the internet privacy, it's constantly changing, right? So you want to make sure that you're setting up effective training programs to promote the safe and appropriate use of social media by your employees. You want to ensure that whatever policies and standards you put in place has some form of escalation mechanisms where in the event that something happens, people actually know what to do, who to run to, and what mechanisms to put in place, and they're kind of prepared in a sense on how to handle incidents or how to handle any uncertainties or things that could come up, right, when managing your social media campaign. You also need to ensure that you have controls in place that kind of help your employees stay or at least safely use social media, like download constraints, ensure that you're monitoring contents, you have anti-malware products installed on your systems, you have at least an incident response plan, like I mentioned earlier, on how to respond when something does happen. You also want to ensure that the type of content that you publish kind of aligns with what your set goals are. It will be you will be running amiss if you're uploading content on LinkedIn that should be on TikTok, or content that is for YouTube on what's another one I can think about. But basically, you have to ensure that you have a content governance policy in place that identifies where what should go, and that the content that you're putting out is actually getting you closer to meeting your goals and objectives for running a social media campaign or building a social media platform for your account on the platform. Moving on from controls, we're going to talk about moving on from governance, we're going to talk about controls. So control basically just means that you're doing everything as an organization or as a business owner or an individual, that you have taken on the responsibility to create a mechanism where you're monitoring your social media usage and the impact of using social media on your business or on your personal brand, right? You want to review the feedback from your connections or from your followers, or the people that you're interacting with on social media. You want to review that to understand what the audience thinks about your content, right? Because if you just keep putting stuff out there and people are not really into what you're putting, then it's actually defeating the purpose. You're not doing your business any good, right? So you want to keep an eye on that, and also closely monitor internal usage of social media. Now, aside what you're doing on the outside to promote your brand, your organization, or the government agency, or your business, you also want to monitor what's going on internally. Do you have social media software monitoring tools on your computers that is at least monitoring and ensuring that your employees are not running the risk of compromising your networks by logging onto their personal social media pages on the company networks, right? You want to make sure that you're constantly monitoring things like that, performing regular risk level assessments, running simulations to test, the security consciousness of your employees or of the people that you work with, because bad actors are always out to get you with one phishing attack or the other. And if you're not always conscious of it, if you're not, very security conscious, there is a chance that there will be a slip up, and that never really ends well for anyone. So, that's also very important, right? And then the NCC framework really highlights the importance of protecting personal information, right? And it demands that any organization or individual that, is processing personal information has to implement reasonable best practice and procedure. And it highlights international security standards like ISO 27001, which is mainly geared at maintaining confidentiality and integrity, right? So the framework is, insisting that if you in any way are involved in processing personal data, then you have the responsibility to make sure that you have implemented the best cybersecurity measures that are available, and that protects the personal information that you are processing. And there are a few government organizations that are responsible for maintaining law and order and the safe usage of social media in Nigeria. A few of them are, like you can see on this slide, Ministry of Communication, Nigerian Communications Commission, which is the body that has, issued this guideline. And basically, they all, in one way or another, have the power to maintain law and order and the safe use of social media. Now, in the event of a major significant event that is capable of undermining national security, these organizations can exercise appropriate measures to contain such incident. I mean, we know of the example, we talked about it earlier, when Twitter was banned in Nigeria in June last year, and that ended up lasting for about 7 months. The government did give some reason, misinformation and activities that could be deemed as a threat to national security. But I'm fairly certain that there are valuable points on opposite sides of the table, in respect of whether or not the government was right to do that. But we're not going to go into that discussion now. I'm just going to run through this real quickly, wrapping up here. So just a few examples of the kind of vulnerabilities and countermeasures that could be used to tackle those vulnerabilities in cases where you have possible risk of virus and malware disruption. You want to make sure that you have top-notch cybersecurity strategy in place in your network, and you're regularly updating and upgrading your systems and softwares. For individuals, they should keep their private accounts separate from corporate accounts, right? Do not use your corporate devices to engage on your personal social media, because you run the risk of compromising the business, the network of your organization, right? And these are just a few examples, and I'm not going to go into too much detail with them. And then for an individual, we've talked about I think the second speaker really, Moses, went into a lot of things that as an individual you can do. So I'm not going to go into much detail about it, but as an individual who is, doing your own thing, building your personal brand, whether on LinkedIn or on any of the social media platforms, you have a responsibility to yourself to understand that, there are bad actors out there. And as much as social media is a wonderful place to become very rich by, doing the unconventional things, you also have to understand that there are risks and security threats to both yourself and the community at large. So, you kind of have the responsibility to make sure that you're exercising caution in your interaction with others, and in the content that you post online, right? If you're an employee for an organization, you need to understand that you are, in a sense, could be seen as a representative of that organization. So you want to be careful what you say or what you do. Be sure to own your opinions and declare that they are clearly your opinions and do not represent the views of your organization. And then you also want to make sure that you're complying with your employer's code of conduct, whatever terms of use have been published by the platform that you're using. Keep your personal information private and make sure that your profiles are private. We don't do it enough, but we really should be checking out our security settings on our platforms and on our devices, right? So I'll conclude by saying that before I conclude, I'll just say that there are one too many situations where employees have, mindlessly posted content that negatively affected the reputation of their employer and sometimes ultimately led to their dismissal, right? So it's important to really just, whatever you do, whatever you're posting out there, be careful with what you put online, what you post. Avoid publishing content that could be considered confidential or proprietary information of your employer. So, conclusively, I'll just say that, the rate at which technology is growing and social media continues to advance, is something that we're pretty sure will be going on for the next few decades, and even afterwards. But we do hope that, with the development that we're seeing, that at some point that, we'll also begin to see development in the Nigerian regulatory landscape. I know the data protection bill has been before the House, and we don't really know when that's going to become a law, but we're hopeful that at least in Nigeria that there will be some structure that tries to mirror what we're seeing, in other jurisdictions like in Europe and other countries that have set up very good standards. And then safe usage of social media cannot be overemphasized for every user category and at all levels of engagement. The NCC is trying to promote that by issuing this guideline and kind of encouraging everyone to adopt it. But I'll just say, at least until there is a formal law passed or some likelihood of possible regulation of social media is achieved. So we'll see how far that goes. So finally, if you don't remember anything I've said about using social media safely, please remember this. Content once published on the internet is immediately available for others to see and may be very difficult and near impossible to retract. Always remember to check your personal settings on your devices, regularly review them, update your devices and the software when they become available to reduce any risk of compromise by bad actors. And as much as you may feel tempted to, do not share passwords with your friends and family. Thank you. So I've come to the end of my presentation. If anyone has any questions, please leave them in the chat and I'll get to them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. In the absence of no question, we're rounding off today's webinar. I must say it has been a profound section today. Thank you to all our speakers for joining us today, despite their busy schedule. I look forward to having you on subsequent webinars. A very big thank you to our sponsors, LLP, African Law Practice, Bluefield LP, Everlaw Associates, Advocate Law Practice, DOA, and Family Solicitors. Thank you also to our attendees for participating in today's webinar. Please note that our next webinar will be on Thursday by 3 p.m. and the topic will be on understanding cloud computing. Lastly, please do subscribe on our YouTube channel at My ESQ Legal to watch past webinars and more webinars. Do enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you so much to our speakers. Do have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Bye.